YouTube, my name is Jack, and today we are going to talk about what Wicca is really all about. Wicca, and by Wicca I mean initiatory, Gardnerian, Alexandrian, etc. Wicca is an initiatory mystery cult. And I've talked at length on this channel about what that means, but there are a couple of key points. Right? The first is that you cannot join except by being initiated by someone who is already in. The second is that upon initiation, you take an oath of secrecy, that there are certain things you will not reveal to outsiders. And the third, and the one that's most relevant for our purposes today, is that the nature of Wicca is fundamentally experiential. And that means a couple of things. That means that you could sort of read the rituals written down on paper and you still wouldn't really kind of get it. There's an idea in Wicca that you have to experience it, you have to go through it in order to really connect with it. But then the second sort of related thing is that there are certain experiences that you go through in a Wiccan coven, particularly in initiation, but no one really tells you what those experiences mean. There are rituals, there are certain symbols, there are sort of transformative, symbolic actions, but at the end of the day, the onus is on you as an initiate to take away your experience of those rituals and to process for yourself what they mean. There's no one who's sort of standing there with a book and saying, okay, so this means this, and this means this, and the official doctrine is da-da-da-da-da. Like, we don't have that. This is a thing that Thorne Mooney talks about in her first book, Traditional Wicca. Let's see if I can find a helpful quote right off the bat. She says, "While it may be fair to observe that traditional Wicca tends toward orthopraxy, it is more consistently true to say that traditional Wicca is experiential. By and large, we believe that our craft must be experienced firsthand in order to really be understood. Further, these experiences, particularly those that are consistent for individuals within a single tradition, cannot be clearly expressed to someone who hasn't shared in them. There's something about the mysteries that transcends language, or so practitioners often insist. In short, traditional Wicca isn't something you can simply read about. It's not just something you believe in, it's something that you do." So that's a really important perspective on Wicca, right? This idea that there's something in the essence of it that is in the doing, is in the action, and you experience it and you interpret that experience for yourself. The other book that I think is really helpful on this point is a scholarly text called Mystery Cults in the Ancient World by Hugh Bowden. This is a fabulous book. It talks a lot about the history of ancient mystery cults, what is actually known about them, what is not known about them, but sort of various pieces of wild speculation have led to popular myths about various mystery cults. It talks in detail about specific mystery cults, so the Eleusinian mysteries, the mysteries of the Great Mother, the mysteries of Mithras, great gods of Samothrace, and so on. And one of the frameworks that Bowden uses in talking about this book is that he distinguishes between what he calls doctrinal and imagistic modes of religion. So doctrinal religion is sort of what is familiar to most of us from like mainstream Christianity, where you go on a regular basis, you sort of sit with a group of people, you receive a sermon, and you are told what the creed is, what the religious belief is, what the stories are, what it all means. You are explicitly told that in language. And the purpose of the doctrinal mode of religion is to kind of repeatedly show up and repeatedly kind of hammer home that message in very explicit terms. Imagistic religion, on the other hand, presents you with a powerful, overwhelming experience, sometimes only a one-time experience, right? A lot of the mystery cults of the ancient world, you underwent initiation and then you never did anything with it ever again. And the idea was that this one-time initiation would be so powerful and so overwhelming that it would transform you for the rest of your life and potentially into the afterlife, depending on your thoughts about eschatology. And so Imagistic Religion doesn't tell you what it all means. Imagistic Religion puts you through an experience and then leaves you to sit with that experience and figure it out for yourself. And it's through contemplation, it's through whatever, meditation, journaling, striving, whatever process you want to go through. But it's through that one overwhelming experience that you come to understand the mysteries, right? The mysteries are not something that's put into words. The mysteries are something that you experience and then interpret for yourself. Now, all of this means it's very difficult to talk about what Wicca is really all about, because it's experiential. Because even if there were one thing that Wicca is actually really all about, I wouldn't be able to tell you unless you had had the same experiences that I have. But also, we have the same experiences and we come away with very different interpretations. This is part of what it means to be an imagistic religion, to be an experiential religion. You can have two people who belong to the same tradition, who belong to the same coven, who do the same rituals, who were initiated on the same night with the same ritual, and who still come away with it, who come away from it, with wildly different understandings of what it's all about, what it all really means. And that can make it difficult to have conversations, not just with outsiders, but with each other about our experiences of Wicca, because so often our experiences are very different from each other. And a lot of the time, unless we are very careful and attentive to that fact, we sort of take for granted that other people's experiences will have been like our own, and then confusion and miscommunication arise when we realize that they aren't. In my experience, it seems to me like every individual or every coven at some point sort of lands on a personal interpretation of the thing in Wicca that is the most central, the thing in Wicca that is the most important. So, for me, it is the cycle of life and death. If you asked me to give an elevator pitch of what Wicca is all about, I would say it's about the cycle of life and death. A thing that I frequently say to my seekers is that the central myth of Wicca is that life and death are in love with each other. We have a goddess of life, we have a god of death. They're more complicated than that, but kind of if you boil them all the way down. And she's in love with him, he's in love with her, and each of them yields to the other out of love, right? Life gives way to death, death gives way to life. There is this ongoing eternal cycle, and that cycle comes from life and death loving each other, and each of them wanting to give over to the other. That's my elevator pitch for Wicca. That's what I really feel that it's all about. And there are lots of other things that are also present, that are also super important, but like, if you ask me what the heart of it is, that's where I would land. And I tell my seekers, like, if you fuck with that idea, if you fuck with the idea that life and death are in love with each other, you probably fuck with Wicca. But that's my interpretation. That is not the official Wiccan, like, this is what Wicca is about. And it wasn't the official interpretation. Sweetie, don't do that. Hey! No. Sorry about that. The cat. She's misbehaving. That is not the official anything. And in my initiating coven, that wasn't the primary focus. My initiating high priestess is really focused on the 4 elements, right? For her, that's the heart of what Wicca is all about. And if you've understood the 4 elements, you've understood Wicca. For her initiating high priestess, it was a gendered polarity between men and women. And if you understood that, you had understood Wicca. There are other initiates who think that Wicca is really fundamentally all about reincarnation, which is similar to, but not exactly the same as my thing about like life and death and everything yielding to everything else. But there are certainly people who feel that it's really all about reincarnation. There are people who feel that it's really all about making babies. Those people there tends to be a very strong overlap between those people and the people who are interested in excluding queer people from initiation and membership in the craft. Because if the craft is all about heterosexual sex that produces babies, queer people don't fit into that. But the point is that, like, there are lots of different viable interpretations. There are other ones that I haven't named here. Not just because I'm, like, withholding them, but also because it hasn't occurred to me, right? I am limited by my own experience and by the people that I've talked to. But I'm sure that there are people out in fucking, I don't know, Spokane, Washington, who think that Wicca is really, really all about X, Y, and Z. And it's never even occurred to me that that would be the heart of Wicca. Even if it's something that might be part of my Wicca, it may never have been the focus for me. We all get to experience the mysteries for ourselves, and as a part of that, we all get to direct our attention and our focus in different places. So what is important to me may not be important to you. And gosh, years ago, I was in the UK. I was visiting a friend who's an initiate, and we were talking, and a particular name came up of a priestess in the community. And I, who was in my salad days and green in judgment, said something to the effect of, oh yeah, but like, she doesn't know what she's doing. And my friend, very much to their credit, stopped that shit, right? Put a stop to it with a quickness, and said, no, she knows exactly what she's doing, she's just not doing the same thing as you. And that was a really important moment for me. That was a really humbling moment for me. And I mean, they were absolutely right? This is an experienced, respected priestess who has decades in the craft, who really knows her shit, is really dedicated to the mysteries. It's just that her understanding of the mysteries is very, very different from my own. That doesn't mean that her coven is doing things wrong or badly. It means that they are exploring the mysteries in a different way than I am exploring them. Neither of us is right and neither of us is wrong, because the mysteries are just bigger than us. And when you encounter a coven or a practitioner who's approaching things differently than you are, I think it's really valuable to approach that with curiosity rather than with kind of immediate dismissal. And that's a lesson that took me a very long time to learn, but it was an important lesson, and I'm really glad that I learned it. So, as for, kind of what Wicca is about, it depends. It depends so much, and it depends on your experience, the experience of the people who are training you, the experience of the other people in your coven. And this is why when people are seeking Wicca, it's so hard to tell anyone seeking what their experience is going to be, because that experience is going to depend so much on the particular group that you're with. Even, again, taking sort of the experience of training with me here in Salt Lake City versus training with my initiating coven in New Jersey, you would have very different training experiences. You would be provided with very different perspectives on what we're trying to do. And neither group is better nor worse, right? But when we talk about fit, when we talk about seeking a coven and finding a group that is the right fit, part of what we mean is just an interpersonal, social thing. Are these people that you like? Are these people that you want to spend time with? Are these people you consider trustworthy? But part of it is also very hard to discern on the seeker's end of things, because there's a question of, does this group approach the mysteries in a way that is going to resonate with me? And that's because you haven't experienced the mysteries. That's a very hard question to answer. But that's why it's so important to get to know a group before you pursue initiation with them, to feel each other out, right? And it goes both ways. But because I guarantee you, there are covens run by people whom I really, respect and admire in the Gardnerian community, people who really know their shit, and people who really impress me as members of the priesthood. And I would die in those covens. I would wither and shrivel and die because their approach to the mysteries is so different from my own, and I just wouldn't be the right fit. And likewise for the leaders of those covens, right? Like, I like to hope that some of those people like me back and respect me back. But there's no question in my mind that some of them, even though we're very good friends, would not flourish in a coven that approaches the mysteries exactly the way that I do. It just depends. It just depends. And so much of what you're feeling out when you're training with a seekers group, when you're looking at potential initiation into a coven, it's not just interpersonal, it's also, does this group approach the mysteries? Do they talk about the gods? Do they talk about the wheel of the year? Do they talk about magic or whatever in a way that resonates with me? And if the answer is no, that group might not be for you. But also, no group is representative of the entire tradition as a whole. So it may be the case that, initiatory Wicca isn't for you at all, but it may also be the case that you found a group that is doing their thing and doing it well, but their thing just isn't the approach to traditional Wicca that would be the most beneficial for you. Shit's complicated. That's all I have for today. I should go to work. Thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you sometime soon. Bye.